think it's worth considering all the things we've got to do to prevent climate impact from aviation, first of all, because there's a lot of focus on CO2. And there's three main elements to that. There's carbon dioxide, of course. There's also nitrous oxide and contrails. And contrails for clouds, which act like blankets around the world to keep the heat locked in. So we need to tackle all of these things. Now, I think Paddy kind of touched on some of the limitations of biofuels there, which is fundamentally providing enough feedstock to supply the industry, and there simply isn't enough ultimately to replace fossil fuels that way. Another problem with that type of fuel is the production of it actually embeds some carbon emissions. So in other words, there's a climate cost to producing the fuel. So the fuel itself is not technically zero or net zero emission when it is used. Then you've got synthetic fuels, which we've heard from there, which has some of the potential to overcome those supply limitations. But it will still retain some of those other emissions I talked about, such as nitrous oxides and also contrail emissions when it's burnt through a gas turbine. So that's still an issue. The other thing with synthetic fuels is it's made from hydrogen, so it will be produced using hydrogen made from electrolysis using renewable energy. And then it also needs to find a source of CO2, typically extracted out of the atmosphere, and go through a chemical process to make synthetic fuels. All of those steps take additional energy. So ultimately, when you look at it through the economic lens, using the hydrogen directly versus a synthetic fuel, it's going to be a lower cost solution to go hydrogen once we've got the infrastructure and the technology in place. We also have a choice about the CO2 that's being captured. Do we return it to the atmosphere through a synthetic fuel and burning it again? Or do we store it and lock it underground and do something different with it to prevent it going back into the atmosphere? So there's another cost there to consider. So we think ultimately, by the time these technologies have been worked out, hydrogen electric is going to outcompete synthetic fuels on the market because of the economics behind the different choices. We heard a little bit about batteries earlier. Of course, the problem there is, do they pack enough punch? And the answer is they don't. And or will they for the foreseeable future? Which is why I come back to hydrogen electric specifically, because when we use it through a fuel cell, we don't produce nitrous oxides, which will be produced when it's combusted. They can be minimized, but they will be produced when it's combusted. And we can also do things to limit the contrails that from the water vapor that comes out of the fuel cell system too. So hence we're back to hydrogen electric being the ultimate solution to addressing those three major causes of climate change from aviation.